So now what? Republican Senator Ron Johnson joins us. Good evening, sir.
Hello, Greta.
Well, I may be one of the few who doesn't think this is such a big deal that the Jobs Council has been shut down, because I thought it was sort of a silly photo op to begin with that we oftentimes do in Washington. Yeah. We have a problem, so we form some council and we put these luminaries on and we pretend that something happens. So
it was window dressing.
Yeah, it was a photo op. I don't know what they accomplished. Met 4 times in the first year, 0 in the second.
Well, they came up with a report and they made some recommendations, actually pretty good recommendations. Increase investment in the private sector, and make sure that America has abundant and affordable energy. Reduce the regulatory burden. I mean, these are all solid proposals for making sure that America is a more attractive place. But
how do you do it?
They're totally contrary to what President Obama wants to do, though. Let's take a look at affordable energy. It was President Obama that said as a candidate that what we need to do is, because of his cap and trade policies, electricity rates would naturally skyrocket. His energy secretary said we got to get our gasoline prices up to the level of Europe. So what his Jobs Council was proposing runs totally contrary to what President Obama's ideology is. If you're going to make America an attractive place for business expansion, you don't increase people's taxes. You don't continue with this $1.75 trillion regulatory burden on our economy. Greta, that's a number that's larger than all but 8 economies in the world. That is what we burden our businesses with each and every year. And President Obama has done nothing but increase the regulatory burden.
Well, I do like the idea oftentimes that politicians reach out to people with a particular expertise to try to solve problems. But there comes a time when we just sort of form committees just to sort of look good. And if this one did not seem particularly active committee, and if it was active, it didn't do particularly well since the economy shrunk in the last quarter, which was very grim. So that one didn't work out. So where do we stand now? I mean, what are we going to do about jobs?
Well, first of all, we have to get our fiscal house in order. I mean, there's so many things that are creating such high levels of uncertainty, such a lack of confidence, but it starts with getting the federal government's fiscal house in order. We have to have a plan.
The Capitol Hill, I know you voted no, but Capitol Hill today just gave the president, they just extended the credit card for the federal government. I know you voted no on this, but are we really doing anything to get our fiscal business in order?
It starts with fleshing out a plan, a real, a viable plan from President Obama. How about having the Senate pass a budget, which they haven't ddone in over 4 years?
That's apparently now going to be done by mid-April, according to the new deal.
That is certainly one good thing in terms of the House suspending this debt limit, by giving the Democrats the time to pass a budget so we actually have something to compromise with. I'm asked all the time, why don't you guys just get along? I'm happy to work with anybody who's willing to acknowledge the problem and work in good faith to fix it. But it's hard to compromise with something when you don't even have a viable plan. I mean, President Obama's last 2 budgets voted on 3 times, 0 to 6/10. So unserious.
At least he submitted something. I lay the blame actually directly on Senator Harry Reid, because the House had a budget, maybe it's good or bad or indifferent, but Senator Harry Reid never let one be brought to the floor so there could be sort of that give and take, negotiation, discussion, find out what's good. However, where I do cast the blame a little bit back at President Obama is, even though he submitted a budget, is why didn't he pick up the phone and tell his party leader over here, Senator Harry Reid, is get a budget so we can at least have a conversation, start something.
And listen, these are such important issues. I mean, I hate these backroom deals, these last minute. We voted on the fiscal cliff at 1:40 in the morning on New Year's Day.
Who read it?
That is the wrong way of doing it. Well, we knew I certainly knew the basic element. I prevented 99% of Americans from getting an income tax increase. I prevented another $4 trillion flowing into the federal government out of the private, the productive sector, into the very ineffective, inefficient government sector. So I knew it was, the basic thrust of that bill. But that's the wrong way of doing business. We ought to have regular order, which would be the House passes the budget, which it's done. The Senate passes the budget. You go to conference, you reconcile that, and that becomes the framework for all the committee work.
But even like the president was supposed to submit his budget by February 4th of this year, and he's missing that. I mean, there's just no regard for deadlines. If the rest of us in America ignored deadlines in our jobs, if I showed up at 10:15 every night, 10 o'clock, how long would I keep my job?
You wouldn't. You'd be bankrupt, and America is bankrupt. The only reason we're not functionally bankrupt is because we can print money. Greta, do you know what your share of the federal debt is? It's $52,000. If you were a citizen of Greece, you know what your share of Greece is? It'd be $36,000. We have blown by Greece in terms of per capita debt. It's ridiculous.
I think most Americans like to go and borrow $52,000 and pay that up now if we could get out of the increasing debt.
Yeah,
if we could put a cap on it, we buy out now.
Good luck trying to borrow that money under Dodd-Frank.
Anyway, Senator, thank you, sir.